Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for season 2 of Our Voices. As you can see, we have a new set and new energy. That's because we have been on the road in East and West Africa. Our team, as you can see here, we've traveled to South Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria. And we wanted to know what women care about, what they're talking about. And that is what we're going to talk about in the next half hour as we share our experiences with you. Welcome to the show. I'm Hayde FitzPatrick, along with my co-host, Auriane Itangishaka. You, of course, Auriane, traveled with the East Africa team.
Yes, Hayde, definitely. We're so glad to be back from the ground in Africa and bring new, fresh ideas, perspective, and stories for everyone.
Great. Also with us for the first time is Abby Sun. She's one of the producers of our show. Abby, you're usually behind the camera, right? Today you're in front of the camera. You went to East Africa as well.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. And I have a confess to make this my first trip to Africa.
Wonderful.
And I have to say I'm so lucky and fortunate to travel with my coworkers, because without them I wouldn't have this unique experience I had.
Well, we're so happy to have you on the show. My traveling partner, Tatenda Gumbo, we went to West Africa. We had a fantastic time, didn't we?
We did. We had an absolutely amazing time, and I cannot wait to share what we got from Nigeria and Ghana.
And it's going to be good, I just know it. Ayen Bior, welcome back, season 2 of Our Voices. And you went to not just to Uganda and to Kenya, you also went to South Sudan.
South Sudan, yeah, I did. And for me, it was a really intense reporting trip. Both me and Abby actually went to South Sudan. And when we were there, we got the chance to break news because Rebel leader Riek Machar decided to just show up actually on our last day as we were going out. So we decided to stay to cover that. So that was very exciting. But the one thing that really surprised me about South Sudan is how hard to report there. I remember me and Abby, we took a camera to the markets and everyone was staring at us. And we were like, what's going on? A filmmaker told us that the camera in South Sudan is much scarier than the gun.
Wow.
And so we definitely felt that. But I can't wait to share all my stories with you.
And we are definitely looking forward to that. But ladies, break this down for us a little bit. You went to East Africa. Just for our viewers to understand, what was the point of this trip? And what did you learn when you were there?
Definitely, Hayde. We went on the ground to get exactly the fresh perspective, fresh ideas for our content. And of course, we had interviews, we had stories we had to cover, but most importantly for the East Africa team, we had to do a co-production. And pretty much what a co-production is, 2 affiliate stations coming together and bringing their skills and their resources. We had anchors from KTN News and in Nairobi and NBS in Uganda work with us, and we were able to produce a great episode.
Well, just for our viewers to understand exactly what a co-production, not just a co-production is, but what an affiliate station is. You're watching our show right now on an affiliate station. These are the stations on the continent we rely on to bring our content to you. So NBS, TV, KTN, those are affiliate stations, and many others, of course, across the continent.
And just to add one more thing is that in Nairobi, we were able to boost about 1 million more viewers because of the production that we made. And so that was a great pride to be able to know that more people were watching.
Exactly. I think the co-production experience and then the reporting experience that Ayen and Auriane just talking about, it's really important to me because I don't have a root on the continent, and it got me closer to our audience. For that, we put together a video piece, a little something to give you an idea what we have done in the past months when we're traveling and the highlights of what we are going to bring you in the next few months. Let's take a look.
This is Ayen Bior, and we are in beautiful Nairobi, Kenya, the city in the sun. On the program before, we've talked about the challenges of housing. Well, we're on our way to Nakuru right now to speak to residents. South Sudanese diaspora members got enough money together to build their first project.
Former South Sudanese first vice president turned opposition leader Riek Machar received a red carpet welcome at Juba International Airport on Monday. The parties are due to form a transitional government of national unity on November 12th.
This is one of Juba's busiest streets, I take it.
like the war broke up in 2013, the war was from both sides, on the ground and online.
Now, if this school never existed, I'm wondering where we could take these girls being subjected to the harmful cultural practices like child marriage, human trafficking.
We are here at Kalengwe Market, Uganda, Kampala, where women are asking for their conditions to change, the conditions of sexual harassment, sanitary situation.
Can't you build for us a toilet for women in this market?
We're in beautiful Kampala for a special partnership with NBS Television.
There's a way it categorizes who is influenced by social media.
I think the most powerful impact of social media has been in the area of feminism and the rights of women.
Glad to have you. Welcome to Nairobi.
Thank you so much.
As much as she might want to take care of her child, this is not the place for it.
This discussion, some might ask, is it a valid discussion? Is it a pressing issue at the moment? But we want to hear the women's voice. Yes, men's perspective is very welcome.
When she came in, we managed to operate that trunk and stitch it back to normal. Okay, good boy, right?
So as you guys can see there, we definitely covered a lot of ground in East Africa. But I have to say, one of the best things with Uganda and Kenya and even South Sudan is we got to interact with some of the best journalists in East Africa. Akisa Wandera, you saw her in this quick story that we put together. She is so incredible. She could probably do the job in her sleep. And then there's Bahati Hilda. I mean, her ability to just relate to who she's talking to is something that I wish I had. So I think that was probably my favorite part, is getting to work with both NBS and KTN journalists, as well as meeting journalists in South Sudan.
But I mean, you guys went all over. Auriane, I remember seeing some images of you in your favorite place,
my favorite
the
place,
marketplace.
The marketplace. I mean, like a fish in the sea. I love the marketplace because of the market women. I mean, in Kampala, I was able to go to one of the marketplace, meet with the women, just get down with them and sit down and hear their challenges. From sanitary situation, they are crying out for bathrooms that are designated only to women because they have different needs. I was able to talk to different women who basically just were average women who were trying to provide for their families, contribute to their countries and the economy, and of course trying to advocate for better conditions for themselves. We're able to also cover the wildlife. We're able to understand wildlife conservation in Kenya, the lives of the people behind like wildlife conservation and the sacrifice that they make, because it's a 24-hour job to, for instance, keep the orphan elephants, and the way they have to sacrifice their human families to be with their elephant families and care for them when they're rescued, protected, and sent back into the wild. So we're able to do the stories like that, and so, you know, just keep a lookout for those kind of stories. It's going to be amazing.
And speaking on the co-productions themselves, you guys tackled, two different topics with NBS and KTN. Now with the NBS co-production, you guys talked about social media influence, which I loved a lot, of course.
I watched that show too.
Yeah, it was very good. And I wanted to ask you guys, while you were there in Uganda and Kenya, would you say that these social influencers are actually shaking things up? Like, are they influencing systems and are they changing things?
I certainly think they are. I mean, look at Bobby Wine, right? Like, he really went international, and he's also Ugandan. But social media is so influential that the government in Uganda instituted a social media tax, about 200 Ugandan shillings, which is about 5 cents. In reality, if you think about it, that is a lot of money for a lot of people in Uganda. But when we spoke to Bahati Hilda and Sabrina Agasha during the Uganda special, they both told us that a lot of people in Uganda think that the social media tax is a way for the government to basically stifle freedom of expression online. So yes, I do think it's really influential, so much so that the government itself had to do something to stop the influence, essentially.
But I also think that, from my experience from being both in Kampala and Nairobi, they're very conservative societies. And the human rights lawyer, Opio, that I spoke with, say that the politicians don't really feel shaken or threatened by the social media moves because they say that it's not hashtag that make the policies, but the politicians make the policies. So they are very conservative in that whatever they believe is what needs to be made as a policy is what's going to stand.
And just really quick, the other thing that OPO said is that social media is a luxury that you see in the cities. In the towns, the people there don't really use social media, but they have the voting power.
Right. I think the other perspective we're looking at social media phenomenon is the psychological consequences. There are quite a lot of young people are looking up to social media influencers, thinking they can just skip the conventional education path and the career path to become one of them, and they don't really hear about the life behind the glamorous social media appearance. So because of that, our partner with NBS TV actually interviewed this social media influencer, Anita Fabiola, and we are fortunate to get the video and already post on our social media. So to our audience, please go to our website and our social media accounts to look for those interviews.
That's right.
And this is so fascinating to me because of the importance of social media. But what about real life? You know, you spoke about the market women.
Yes, real life.
Who else did you meet that really, and very briefly, who really made an impact?
Definitely, as Ayen had mentioned, I mean, also you mentioned, I met the marketplace women, which really impacted me personally, but also the women that we work with, some phenomenal women. But first, on the road, we had an opportunity to work with some phenomenal women at the NBS TV in Kampala and KTN News in Nairobi. Let me introduce you to our collaboration co-host in the Your Voice segment.
So working on VOA's and KTN News collaboration, Our Voices, was major. It was profound, being right at the center of conversations to do with women in the African continent, their problems, possible solutions to this problem. How do we empower them? It was great to have one topic that was very timely in the country and expound it to across the continent. And of course, also another great learning experience from the team that came to Nairobi from VOA, learning from each other, looking at best practices that we can use to ensure that in future we put women's issues at the forefront in whichever medium or platforms we have.
Hi guys, my name is Sabrina Agasha. I'm a TV and radio personality at Next Media Services in Kampala, Uganda. And I can say I'm actually living and working in my dream job. Now, I recently had the exciting opportunity to work with the Our Voices team from Voice of America. I met up with Ayen and Auriane, as well as the entire production team, and it was quite a great learning opportunity. I absolutely look forward to working with them again.
And we're going to keep bringing you more voices throughout the show. If you want to join the conversation, catch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our handle there is @VOA Our Voices. We're also on WhatsApp. The number, as always, is on your screen. Please tell us what you think we should be focusing on in the coming weeks and months here on the show. After the break, we take you to West Africa, and we'll show you why Tatenda Gumbo and I are now officially South West Africans. You're watching Our Voices. Welcome back. Now, before the break, we talked about our recent trips to East and West Africa. As we said, Auriane, Abby, and Ayen traveled to East Africa. But Tatenda Gumbo and I went to West Africa, and we had ourselves a grand old time in Accra and in Abuja.
Yes, I mean, we had a wonderful time, Hayde, as you ladies, we've told you. I mean, we spoke to young people in Accra. We interviewed people who've taken the heed to return to Ghana, year of the return. And we also spoke to daring women in Abuja who are in media, such as ourselves. I think we covered so much ground, Hayde. It was amazing.
Right, and we called it a road show. It didn't have a bus or anything else that makes something a road show, but we just called it that anyway. Right. And we also put together a little story to show you why this trip was so memorable. Take a look. Our brief was to make 10 media appearances to promote Our Voices in West Africa.
Our first stop, Accra, Ghana.
The Our Voices team is in Ghana. We've been seeing the show on the VOA. You're welcome to Ghana. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much for having us. At the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, we sat down with Selecom Akolatse to talk about something right up our alley, women and the media.
We have to look back and look at how also women have been portrayed in the media.
Exactly. That's what I was coming to next, and I'm glad you've brought it up.
What about the everyday woman? What is she doing? And I think those stories, those matter more.
Women in Africa are not poor, they were made poor. We all need to do a better job of speaking to the women who don't have access and privilege.
And don't ever say, well, maybe this is not for me, it's for you. And if it doesn't work out, take the next thing.
African women's voices shouldn't just be heard in Africa. Africans live all over the world. They are contributing to economies. African women are contributing to economies in massive ways all over the world.
From Hijra TV to a candid conversation with ETV Ghana's Nosisa Doe, we talked about what Our Voices brings to African audiences. And that was our cue to rise and shine on City TV.
VOA's Our Voices. The great thing about this show is it's Pan-African.
We've tackled health, we've tackled issues of abortion, we've tackled issues of entrepreneurship. We say, okay, if we don't know, let's go there and let's have the stories be told for us.
And so we came to Ghana.
We love having you. Our mothers who are selling in the streets and in the markets, how do you ensure that your content, they can connect and relate to it as well?
Tell their stories with their dignity intact. For so long, African women have been portrayed in the way other people choose to see them.
We have to keep the voices of women on the continent alive.
Then it was time for the hot seat, a one-on-one for each of us at GBC and City TV.
It is about fairness. You can have political freedom, but if you don't have economic freedom, you're not free.
And that meant speaking and listening to women, activists on the gender pay gap, women in media on youth unemployment, small business owners on perseverance, and a real-life queen on breaking barriers.
I was born a rebel. No one tames me.
From Royal Rebels with a Cause to Ghana's Year of Return campaign,
we're here in the capital of Accra to find out how it is going.
I came here with a completely...
I spoke to Americans of African descent who moved to Africa, reflecting on the consequences of their decision. It was on to our next destination.
I'm Tatenda Gumbo in Abuja, Nigeria.
At ITV, a candid discussion about culture and the need for women to unite. But on Abuja's radio airwaves, outrage over xenophobic violence in South Africa.
That's a great step in the right direction.
But this trip was about strengthening relationships and partnerships with affiliates. And that unforgettable evening with fellow women journalists as we talked about the challenges and ironies of fighting for equality. Shared our hopes for the women of our continent. We left West Africa with new ideas, new relationships, and new determination. Oh, and many stories to tell about the promise, the purpose, and the power of our voices.
Wow, looks like you guys had a great time.
We did. We really did. It was really good. That was amazing. So I'm just wondering, like, what are some of the things some of the issues that are being talked about in the communities, in the airwaves, in West Africa?
I mean, I think we obviously know that a lot of the topics that we talk about on the continent are very similar. One of the glaring topics that I think we saw as soon as we landed, you start seeing the issue of joblessness, the issue of unemployment, and we saw a lot of that in Accra. I had the opportunity to kind of go out, and my point was to go out and kind of talk to tourists about this year of the return. But I ended up finding myself speaking to young people, and they were talking about their experiences being unable to find employment in Accra. And these are young, educated people who've spent years, getting degrees, bachelor's, master's, and they find themselves unable to find employment. So they're kind of now becoming, a bit innovative, a bit creative, and creating entrepreneurial, endeavors for themselves. I met young people who were volunteering at the Kwame Nkrumah memorial, because they said that at least if I have something on my CV that says I'm doing something while I'm looking for a job, it works well.
Right.
I met a young man who has sort of created this like small scale tourism company. He takes tourists and he kind of shows them around Accra, gives them a time.
Is he leveraging on the year of the return?
He is leveraging very much. So it was good to see that, and I think it kind of is a way to create some sort of opportunity in economic systems that are essentially failing young people on the continent.
And I think it's like they say, necessity is the mother of invention. And so you see in a lot of places where entrepreneurship is really the only way, it's a necessity. It's really the only way that young people can make money. In South Sudan, I spoke to a lot of filmmakers who weren't getting paid, but they were hoping that someone, some NGO or some foreign company could see their work and then pay them for it. And I think it's kind of sad that, you know, these young people are looking outside to make a living for their own selves, but this has become the reality for a lot of people.
Or that our young people are sitting on the sidewalks. We always talk about access to education, but what about access to jobs then once they have that education? I think that was another sad thing.
Many of them are definitely educated.
Yes, and I mean, Hayde, this came up because you were a South African in Nigeria, and I think you brought this point up very well, where you spoke about economic systems and what happens when people feel like they don't have anything tangible to hold on to, and I think that came up with a conversation around xenophobia.
We talk about joblessness and its link to crime all the time, so why are we now surprised when you see it manifesting on the streets in terms of violence, such as xenophobic violence? And of course, I had the great pleasure to be in Nigeria as a South African at the same time when xenophobic violence was flaring up again in South Africa. But to Tatenda's point, all I could simply say, based on the reporting that I had done over the years on this issue, based on just being South African and seeing people's lives in South Africa firsthand, is that, you know, this does come down to economics, and that we need to hold our leaders to account, because if they are not providing the opportunities that they promised during elections, people won't have, if they don't do that, people have no choice but to go somewhere else and look for better opportunities. Only problem is they find themselves in another place where there are no opportunities, and those people feel threatened, and then violence breaks out. So it's about economics.
But it's fascinating that you were in Nigeria while all of this was happening. I remember when there was a flare-up in violence, it seemed like there was a breakdown in communication. Yes. You, as being South African, did you feel that in Nigeria? Were people listening to you?
There was a lot of rage there, and what worries me always is the knee-jerk reaction, whether that be xenophobic violence or the reaction to the xenophobic violence. And here I was kind of worried that I'm in Nigeria and I have to worry, is it okay to say I'm South African? When sometimes Nigerians are in South Africa and their parents have to call to find out, are they okay? And this is the kind of thing, you know, the knock-on effects of xenophobia, that we now have to be ashamed of who we are in each other's countries, and that we have to fear each other. That to me was the saddest, but I will say, on the whole, I loved being in Nigeria. It was fantastic.
Right. Despite all this, we've seen the problems, we've seen the jobless market, but me and Ayen, we went to Kakuma refugee camp. We've seen this very comprehensive and established mature educational system. We met a lot of young women, they're very aspiring. And I guess my question is, your trip is different from ours. We're on reporting and co-production, and you guys are more on publicity interviews and then talking to communities. So can you draw the comparison of those two, and how do you feel differently?
Right, you know, I would say it's always important to have the face-to-face, and we were able to do that through stories. But we were very fortunate enough that we could really build good relationships with women and men in the media who had a platform, who had an audience, they had great followings, and they were generous enough to invite us onto their show so we could talk about our show. But the message we wanted to send was not just, you know, that we were here to try and build an audience for our show, but we're trying to build relationships with our colleagues and with a new crop of audience. And there's room enough for all of us in this big town we call the continent or the world. There's room enough for all of us, and we should all be having this conversation like we are here on Our Voices.
And as you said before, Hayde, it's good that they continue to have those conversations on the ground, and we do it on an international level.
Right, and we're going to continue the conversation here after the break. We're going to bring you a very special story about a group of young women who are dreaming big at a boarding school in an unexpected place. Our Women to Watch segment is next.
Like Voice of America on Facebook. Follow VOA on Twitter. Join VOA on our YouTube channel. Like follow, join VOA.
Welcome back. This is Our Voices, and it's time for our Women to Watch segment. Today, we bring you the story of a group of young teens at a boarding school in, like we said, a place you wouldn't expect. They're the young teen women to watch. And Ayen, this is a story that you covered in East Africa.
Yeah, and it was such an inspiring story for both me and Abby to cover while we were in Kakuma. Take a look at this. It's 5 a.m. in northern Kenya's Kakuma refugee camp. The sun isn't up yet, but the students at the Angelina Jolie Girls Primary School have already started their 18-hour day. And it will be a rigorous one, filled with classes, daily chores, and extracurricular activities. The packed daily schedule in this boarding school is just as ambitious as the teenagers themselves. What you see here are aspiring doctors, lawyers, poets, and even future presidents. Nothing is holding these young women back, not even the confines of the refugee camp. Remember, these girls have to get official permission to leave the camp.
Exactly, Ayen. I have to say the day we spent in the Kakuma camp, the primary school, is one of my favorite days in this trip.
And you also had a birthday while in Kakuma.
I know, my birthday was in Kakuma camp. I think what very special moment for me is when I was doing the interview, I was holding the camera, there are young students lining behind me and try to find the interview window when Ayen is doing the interview with the teachers to talk to her, to ask her for advices, to ask her for ideas how to become someone like her, how to grow their professional career as well.
That is no pressure.
I know. That's a very special moment. That's the first time I feel like, I'm really connect to my audience, and this show is making an impact.
Right. I mean, what we do is not just a privilege, it's a responsibility to the people watching us. So it was an honor to really be on the ground and do everything that we did.
I'm really looking forward to the bigger piece on this story.
All the stories that we were able to cover. I think
Lots
we have
of
a lot
stories.
coming for the audience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, from East to West Africa, we do hope you enjoyed this look back at our time on the continent. We're back in Washington, ready to bring everything we learned in Africa to this table on this international platform and make it part of the Our Voices conversation.
And we leave you with a message from Ghanaian journalist and women's rights activist Gifty Auntie. She used her voice to say,
So I have a saying that it's okay to be the odd one. Because in your oddness, you stand out. And when you stand out, you become unique. And when you're unique, success comes just like that. So it's a process. You start from somewhere.
And that is our show this week. Thank you so much for being with us, ladies. Thank you for being here on the panel and sharing all your amazing stories. We are looking forward to seeing all of that pan out here on the show, and we hope you will keep joining us. We'll see you next time. Until then, it's goodbye.